The village of Draymore had long feared the girl who walked alone. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her hair like spun silver, and her eyes shone with a strange, otherworldly glow. The villagers whispered behind closed doors and crossed themselves when she passed. They called her a witch, though she had never done anyone harm. Lyra, the girl, had learned to move quietly, to hide in shadows, to avoid the angry eyes and pointing fingers. Her only companions were the wind that whispered through the old trees and the distant howl of wolves in the forest. From the moment she had first opened her eyes, she had felt the weight of the world's fear upon her, and now at 16 it pressed harder than ever. The curse, as the villagers called it, was not hers. It belonged to her bloodline, a shadow that had clung to her ancestors like a ghost. Yet, for reasons she could not understand, the magic inside her had begun to awaken. Small sparks would appear when she was frightened or angry, lights dancing across her fingertips, harmless but enough to make the villagers scream and run. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned a bruised purple, Lyra heard the town criers shouting from the center of the square. "A witch! A witch walks among us! The king demands her capture." Her heart froze. She knew what that meant. The soldiers would come with ropes and iron chains. They would drag her to the castle and, perhaps worse, the thought of being trapped, branded, or thrown into the dark dungeons made her shiver. Lyra ran. She ran through narrow streets, past shuttered windows, her bare feet silent against the cobblestones. She slipped through alleys and ducked beneath low branches, moving toward the forest that had always been her secret refuge. Every step carried fear, but also a strange sense of freedom. In the forest, no one could judge her. In the forest, the wind and trees were friends, but freedom was fragile. Soldiers followed her, shouting her name and swinging torches. She ducked behind an ancient oak, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. The forest, though familiar, seemed darker tonight. Shadows twisted unnaturally as if the trees themselves were warning her. Then she stumbled. Her ankle caught on a root and she fell hard. Pain shot up her leg, and for a moment the soldiers were upon her. She closed her eyes, expecting screams, chains, and punishment. Instead, she heard a calm voice, deep and commanding, cutting through the shouts. "Stop!" The soldiers froze. From the darkness of the forest a figure emerged, taller than any man, with eyes like polished obsidian and skin pale as snow. His presence was magnetic, terrifying, and yet strangely comforting. He walked toward her, silent, regal, his long coat flowing like liquid night. His gaze met hers. And for the first time in her life, Lyra did not feel fear alone. "She is pure," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made the soldiers step back instinctively. "Your Highness," one soldier stammered, bowing. "We were—" "Enough," the figure interrupted. He turned his dark eyes on Lyra. "Come with me, child." Lyra hesitated. The forest was her home, yet she knew that this man, this alpha, this vampire, was no ordinary human. Legends spoke of vampires who ruled kingdoms, who could destroy life with a single thought. And yet she felt no danger from him. Only curiosity, and perhaps for the first time a glimmer of hope. He extended a hand. Trembling, Lyra took it. The moment their hands touched, a warmth spread through her. Unlike anything she had known, it was not fire nor lightning. It was a quiet, steady pulse, as if her soul recognized something it had longed for. The vampire led her through the forest, and the soldiers, afraid to disobey, fell behind. The night seemed alive with whispers, and the trees parted as though bowing to his will. Lyra could see the faint glow of a fortress in the distance, dark and majestic, perched on a hill like a crown of shadows. "This is my home," he said. "You will be safe here." She looked up at the fortress, awe and fear mingling in her chest. The walls were made of black stone that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Towers stretched toward the sky, their peaks lost in mist. The gates opened as they approached, revealing a courtyard where statues of creatures long forgotten stood guard. Inside, the halls were vast and silent. Candles flickered along the walls, casting long shadows that danced like living spirits. Lyra felt small and fragile amidst the grandeur, yet the vampire's presence made her feel protected, as if nothing in the world could harm her while he was near. "You are not a witch," he said softly. "You are something more. Something the world fears because it cannot understand." Lyra's throat tightened. She had long believed the whispers, the curses, the fear. Could it be true? Could she really be something different yet good? He guided her to a chamber at the top of the tallest tower. The room was simple yet elegant. Large windows framed the night sky, and the moonlight poured in, bathing her in silver. "Rest," he instructed. "Tomorrow you will begin to learn who you are." Lyra lay down, her mind racing. She thought of her village, her parents who had died when she was young, the cruel whispers, the fear that had followed her all her life. And now this, a vampire who called her pure, who saw something in her that no one else did. Sleep came slowly, and in her dreams, she saw visions. A vast darkness that wanted to swallow her whole, a light within her, fragile but unyielding, pushing the shadows back. A voice deep and commanding, saying her name, guiding her, protecting her. When she awoke, the vampire was already there, waiting. "Today," he said, "you will touch the magic within you. Not to harm, but to understand. The world has feared you for what you cannot yet control, but here in my domain you will learn, and perhaps one day the world will see you as I do, pure." He extended his hand and she felt the warmth again. Tentatively, she reached out, and as her fingers brushed his, a small spark of light appeared in the air between them. It hovered, trembling, then steadied, glowing with a soft silver radiance. Lyra gasped. She had never done that before, not intentionally. The spark danced like a living creature responding to her heartbeat. She looked up at the vampire, and in his dark eyes she saw awe. "You see," he said gently, "you are not cursed. You are powerful. But power without guidance can destroy even the kindest heart. That is why I am here. That is why I saved you." For the first time, Lyra felt hope, not just for survival, but for herself. Perhaps she was not a monster. Perhaps she could be something more. But outside the fortress, in the shadows of the forest, eyes still watched. Soldiers and witches who had long feared her power lingered, plotting, whispering. They did not yet understand that the girl they called a witch was under the protection of the most dangerous being in the land, and they would not give up easily. As the sun set again and the fortress was bathed in moonlight, Lyra stood at the tower window, staring at the distant village. She felt a strange mix of fear and determination. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Her magic, her power, and her destiny were all unknown. But for the first time she was not alone. And somewhere deep within, she felt it. The stirring of a future that was hers to shape, with the vampire who had called her pure by her side. The night whispered around her. Shadows stretched and twisted, and from the darkness a soft voice seemed to echo. "The world will not understand her, but she will shine anyway." Lyra closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The journey was only beginning, and though danger awaited, she felt something she had never felt before. The quiet, unshakable certainty that she was meant for more than fear. The fortress of shadows was silent yet alive. Every corridor, every stone seemed to hum with unseen energy. Lyra woke with the memory of the silver spark still glowing faintly in her palm. She had dreamed again, visions of darkness and light, of power and responsibility, of a destiny that seemed bigger than herself. But in the fortress, under the watchful eyes of Vladis, the alpha vampire, she felt safe enough to explore that destiny. Vladis watched her from across the room as she stretched, pale hair catching the morning light that spilled through the tall windows. He did not speak, merely observed. There was something about her, he thought, that reminded him of a world he had long abandoned, one of innocence and courage, of choices not yet tainted by centuries of fear and regret. "Good morning," Lyra said softly, sensing his presence even before looking up. "Morning," he replied, his deep voice calm but carrying weight. "Today you will learn more about your power. You cannot hide from it, Lyra, not forever, and I will not let you be afraid." Fear had been her constant companion for as long as she could remember, but now, standing in the grand hall of his fortress, the sunlight touching her skin like a blessing, Lyra felt a stirring of confidence. Perhaps this power was not a curse after all. Perhaps it could be a gift. He led her to the training chambers, vast and lined with mirrors, the air thick with energy. The mirrors reflected not only their images, but shadows that seemed alive, moving independently, whispering secrets of the past and glimpses of the future. "Look into the mirrors," Vladis instructed. "See yourself. Not as the villagers see you, not as the world labels you, but as you truly are." Lyra stepped forward hesitantly. Her reflection shimmered. For a moment she saw herself twisted like in the dream, a shadow threatening to consume her. But then it changed. Light emerged from within her reflection, gentle but strong, pushing back the darkness. I see it, she whispered, voice trembling. I can feel it. Good, Vladis said. That is the beginning. Your power is tied to your heart, to your choices, to the purity of your spirit. If you understand that, nothing can destroy you. Hours passed as she practiced small spells, controlling the flickers of light, the movement of objects, the whispers of the wind. Every success filled her with awe. Every mistake reminded her of the fragility of her magic. And through it all, Vladis watched, correcting, guiding, encouraging, but never forcing. By evening, Lyra was exhausted yet exhilarated. She had touched a new part of herself today, a part that was fearless, radiant, and alive. Rest now, Vladis said. Tomorrow we will begin the next lesson, one that will challenge not only your magic but your courage. That night, as she lay in her chamber, Lyra thought of her village. She had feared them for so long, and yet a part of her longed for their acceptance. She wondered if they could ever see her for what she truly was, rather than what they had been told to fear. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden chill. The candle flickered and the shadows along the walls deepened. Outside, in the forest surrounding the fortress, a group of dark figures moved with purpose. Mortals and rogue vampires, she realized, sent by those who still feared her power, who still whispered that the girl with albinism was cursed. The next morning, Vladis informed her of the threat. His voice was steady but urgent. They are coming, he said, to capture you or worse. You must be ready. Lyra's heart raced. Fear surged, but it was different now. She had learned that fear could be a guide, not just a chain. She nodded. Together they prepared. Vladis taught her defensive spells, ways to harness light to shield herself, ways to move unseen. Lyra absorbed everything with a fierce determination, realizing that survival was only the beginning. When the attackers arrived, the fortress gates loomed like giants of stone. Shadows moved swiftly across the battlements as Vladis summoned the strength of centuries. Lyra followed his lead, her own magic responding to her heartbeat. The battle was swift and intense. Figures lunged and struck, but Lyra's shields of light shimmered and held. Small bursts of magic repelled attackers, sending them sprawling. And in the midst of chaos, she felt something extraordinary. Her power was not separate from her spirit. It was her spirit. It responded to her thoughts, her courage, her will. Vladis fought alongside her, a whirlwind of strength and precision. And when Lyra faltered, unsure if she could contain a growing surge of energy, he was there, steadying her, guiding her. Their eyes met, and in that moment words were unnecessary. Trust passed between them, deeper than anything she had known. When the dust settled, the attackers were driven back. Some fled into the forest, others vanished into the shadows from which they came. Lyra's hands glowed faintly, her magic exhausted but under her control. She had done it. She had faced fear and survived. Vladis placed a hand on her shoulder. You see, he said softly, you are not cursed. You are powerful. And more than that, you are brave. Lyra looked at him, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. She had expected fear or perhaps relief. Instead, she felt gratitude, admiration, and something more, a connection that defied explanation. He had saved her, yes, but in guiding her, he had awakened something inside her she had not known existed. The night fell again, and the fortress was quiet. Lyra stood at the top of the tower looking out at the forest. She no longer felt like the hunted girl from Draymore. She felt alive, strong, whole. Vladis joined her silently. Together they watched the moon rise, silver light spilling across the landscape. Do you understand now? He asked. I think I do, she replied. The world may still fear me, but I will not fear myself anymore. He nodded as though that simple declaration was the most important thing in the world. Good, fear can destroy or it can guide. You have chosen the right path. For a long moment they stood in silence, the night wind whispering around them, and then a sound reached their ears. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper carried on the wind, a voice that sent a chill down Lyra's spine. The Alpha's heart can be taken, and the girl's power can be stolen, it said. Lyra turned to Vladis, alarm and determination in her eyes. Who is that? He did not answer immediately. His expression darkened, shadows flickering across his features. The world is not done with us, he said finally. Our trials are only beginning. But whatever comes, we will face it together. Lyra nodded, her hand brushing against the faint glow of magic that still lingered in her fingertips. She had been called cursed, feared, hunted. She had been told she was a witch, a monster, a danger. But now, standing beside the being who had saved her, she knew the truth. She was not cursed. She was not alone. And she was stronger than anyone had imagined. The fortress loomed behind them, dark and magnificent, a beacon in the night. Ahead, the world was uncertain, full of shadows and threats. But Lyra felt ready. She would face it all, not with fear, but with courage, with magic, and with the bond that had formed between her and Vladis, the alpha vampire who had called her pure. And in the distance, in the quiet whisper of the night, the shadows stirred. The world had not finished testing her, not finished trying to claim her power. But Lyra did not falter. She had learned to trust herself, to trust her magic, and to trust the vampire who had seen in her something no one else could. Together, they watched the moon climb higher, a silver sentinel in the darkened sky, and somewhere deep in the forest a whisper carried on the wind. The girl with albinism is no longer afraid. And the alpha is not alone. The journey was far from over. But for the first time, Lyra believed that she could face whatever darkness the world sent, and perhaps even change it.